So now let's see if we can trace the cause of mood disorders. It could be traced back to a person's heritage, meaning if your parents had mood disorders, it very well you could have a mood disorder yourself. It could be the fact your grandparents even they haven't really tried to go too much further back than that. But it could be disturbances in the neurotransmitters, meaning like your neurotransmitters firing itself. Could be problems in your endocrine system that is dealing with your hormones. If you guys remember talking about that earlier this year, or it could just be the fact that you have irrational cognitive skills, irrational thinking, meaning things don't line up the way that they should. You're being irrational. Maybe you've heard people say that. And so it could be traced to several of these things. So let's talk about a couple of people that had ideas of what they thought happened. Aaron Beck was a cognitive theorist, meaning, again, talking about the way that you process information. And he talked about exaggerated negative thoughts and maladaptive beliefs contribute to the development and prolonging of mood disturbances. So, what we're kind of saying here is that when you have exaggerated negative thoughts, like stuff going on in your head, it just kind of permeates there and it stays there for a really, really long time. And we talk about maladaptive beliefs, meaning things don't contribute to the way like an adaptive way, meaning they're negative. We talked about maladaptive ways to deal with stress, and it'd be ways that aren't positive, aren't good for you. Um, Remember, I don't know if you guys remember talking about how like sometimes people maladaptive way to deal with stress is punching other people. That's not rational. It's not good. So he said that you have exaggerated negative thoughts and maladaptive beliefs contribute to the development and prolonging of mood disturbances. So these things kind of keep going on in your mind and they keep tracing over and over and over and over again. And as a result, it just continues to prolong your mood disturbance because it's just staying there. And it's called the maladaptive thinking patterns of individuals with depressions in terms of what he calls the negative cognitive triad. Triad meaning three, there cognitive meaning the way your brain processes things. He said basically it starts off with you have a negative interpretation about who you are, meaning maybe you don't have a lot of self-esteem. You have people say you're smart but you think you're dumb. People say you're pretty but you think you're ugly. People say that you're athletic and you think you're uncoordinated. And then experiences that they've had, this is the second part that kind of goes into the thinking process here, is that you've had an experience where you thought that you were athletic and you were trying out for a team and you got cut. And that thought stayed in your mind and it was an experience. Or maybe everybody else tells you you're pretty, but the one person that you really want to like you says that you're ugly. And so therefore, that's an experience that you've had that's going to permeate in your mind. And then your future. Basically meaning as you move forward, you have those thoughts that continue to deal with what's going on in your head. They just kind of stay there and you can't really get them out of your head and it affects your future. And so Aaron Beck just basically said that it's all of these thoughts that continue to just permeate in your mind, and it's based on these three things, the negative cognitive triad. Now, learned helplessness, we've kind of talked about this already this year. Martin Seligman talked about this, and it was depression results when individuals believe that they no longer have the ability to determine the course of your own life. And it's due to repeated failure of negative consequences, meaning you just are like, I can't really get over what's going on. And so you do not believe that you can affect any further outcome in your life. So let's say that you try out for two jobs, you apply for two jobs, you don't get them. And you just decide, you know what? I can't control my own life. I can't control my own fate. I have negative consequences of me not having a job, so I'm not going to have any money. I'm not going to be able to provide for my family. And as a result of that, that stays in your mind, and you just kind of go with that, and you don't try to do anything anymore. You don't try to change anything anymore. And if the individual determines that the negative experiences that they are having are the results of internal causes, which are global, meaning affecting most of the areas of their life, and it's stable, meaning it's relatively permanent, then learned helplessness will develop. So think of it like this. If you believe that let's say that you apply for two jobs, you do not get them. And then a week later, you try for two more jobs and you don't get them. And then maybe in that meantime, you try out for a sports team and you don't get it. So what that means is that all of a sudden, You see these results and it's global, meaning it affected your work life and your athletic life, and then it's stable, meaning all of these things are ending the same result, then you're just going to kind of, almost the idea of learned helplessness is you're just going to give up. You just can't do anything, so you just give up and go with whatever happens to you. You feel like you can't affect anything anymore. And one of the things that kind of goes through people that believe this way, there's two different types of styles that kind of go with the causes of mood disorders. There is what we call the pessimistic explanatory style and the optimistic explanatory style. Now, if you've heard the word somebody say you're a pessimist, it means that you're negative. If you're an optimist, it means that you think, great about things. I myself, you're a teacher, I'm sure you guys can guess which one I am, so I'll give you 2 seconds to guess. Yep, you are correct. I am a pessimist. I am Mr. Negative. I think of the glass half empty. I think of things of like, you know what? This isn't going to work out. The worst case scenario is going to happen. To me, if I plan for the worst case scenario to happen and it doesn't happen, it's been a pretty good time. Optimism, that's more of my wife. My wife is more of the optimist. And so, again, you guys might be more of an optimist. Like, oh, you know what? Everything's going to be great. You just have a good outlook on life. So, a pessimistic explanatory style, as far as dealing with your personality, but also with mood disturbances, is this: it's a tendency to explain setbacks and failures in terms that are personal or internal. They're global and they're stable. So basically what they're saying is that you feel like you didn't do well because of something going on in your life, something that you have controlled. And it's global, meaning it has affected every ounce of your life, and it is stable, meaning it's not really going to change anytime soon. And this is associated with a higher risk for depression, meaning if somebody has in their life the pessimistic explanatory style, meaning they just feel negative about stuff. And the reason why this is associated with a higher risk for depression is because you feel like you can't change anything. You feel like you're just stuck. And so what are you going to do? You're stuck. You can't change it. And so therefore you kind of get into this mode of depression because you're like, well, what am I going to do now? This person that's pessimistic explanatory style is kind of like Eeyore. You guys know who Eeyore is? He's that the donkey on Winnie the Pooh that his tail's always never attached or something weird like that. But he's like, oh, well, it's raining again, so I guess my hooves will get messy. I don't really know if he has hooves. I don't think he actually does have hooves. I think he's like sewn at the bottom of his feet. Anyway, oh, well, my dessert is cold, and it was supposed to be a warm dessert. What am I going to do? And it just kind of leads to a risk of depression because you're just like, what are you going to do? And so that would be the pessimistic explanatory style. So let me give you an example. An individual loses their job, they would attribute it to internal personal causes, meaning I'm bad at everything, I'm a failure. And you guys might be like, how can a person think that? That would just be such a horrible way to live. Well, what happens is these thoughts permeate their mind and they can't get it out of their head. And so they associate one failure with all failures, one failure with everything going on in your life, and it affects every part of it. Now, obviously, if you lose your job, could it affect various parts of your life with your family and with your food and with your entertainment life? Absolutely, it could, but it's not always the case. That's a pessimistic explanatory style. The optimistic explanatory style is this. This person explains negative events in terms that are external, meaning it's outside of your control. Unstable, meaning things will get better, and specific, it only impacts part of their life. These individuals are more resistant to depression. And so this person says, you know what? I didn't get the job. That boss really didn't like me. And it just wasn't meant for me to have this job. And you know what? I'm going to go to another job interview and I'm going to do better. And I'm going to find a better boss. And you know what? That's only going to affect my application at Home Depot. It's not going to affect my application at Menards. It's not going to affect my application at McDonald's or Taco Bell or Five Guys, which sounds tremendously good right now. Oh my word. Five Guys with jalapenos on it, some bacon, some cheese, maybe some fries, and get some Cajun on the side. Dump the Cajun in the ketchup, swirl it around. Oh my word. Anyway, sorry. But what it is these individuals are more resistant to depression because they think, hey, you know what? It just wasn't meant to be. Let's move on. Let's try something different. And so the reason why they're more resistant to depression is because they don't focus it on it being inside of them. It's external. It's something in the environment that has affected them to act this way and to be this way. And so anyway, that's kind of how the optimist looks at it. An individual loses their job, as an example, they would attribute it to external causes and say it was my boss's fault. They didn't really like me. And so that would be kind of how this transfers itself over to other areas of your life. Now, again, optimism and pessimistic explanatory style both deal with mood disorders and causes of mood disorders. So if you have a mood disorder, it could be because you're a pessimist and you have a pessimistic explanatory style. Optimistic explanatory style wouldn't really have a mood disorder. It's just kind of showing you the opposite viewpoint. So hopefully that kind of understands. So again, if you're being a pessimist, you could maybe classify yourself as dealing with things in the pessimistic explanatory style. It doesn't mean you have a mood disturbance. It just means that that's kind of how you view things. You know, this is the whole half glass full, half glass the glass half full, and the glass half empty viewpoint. The pessimist says, "Well, my lemonade, at least it's half full." And the pessimist says, "Man, I've drank half my lemonade. I only have half left. It's kind of a bummer." That's what we're talking about. Maybe I'll ask you guys what you think you are. Hopefully you guys figure out that you're more of an optimist than I am. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to introduce somatic symptoms related disorders, and then we'll be done for today. We're going to get into the different types because these are pretty cool. Well, I shouldn't say cool. I would hate to have one of these things. It would be tough. But anyway, somatic symptom related disorders. The description. The individuals who experience physical problems or symptoms will have only psychological issues. Okay? They experience physical problems or symptoms which have only psychological issues, meaning it's only tied to their mind. The victim does not have conscious control over the disorder, and they're not faking the symptoms. Common complaints could be, so basically what we're saying is this. You as an individual, if you have a somatic disorder, then that means that you do not have conscious control. Like you're not trying to, hey, I'm making this up. Like I'm trying to have this problem. It just happens in your mind. And you're not faking symptoms. You really actually believe that you have these symptoms. That's what makes the somatic symptoms thing so fascinating. And a common complaint where somebody with somatic disorder could be you have lumps. You feel lumps in your throat or lumps on your arm or on your leg. Lightheadedness. You feel pain. Oh, my back hurts. But you know what? You feel like your back hurts, but a doctor would look at the x-rays and couldn't find a thing. They would do all sorts of MRIs and everything, and they couldn't find anything in your back. Chiropractors looking at you, nothing. Paralysis means you can't move. You just are stuck. Okay, you're just stuck. You can't move. And doctors looking at us going, man, I can't figure out why this person can't move. Blindness, meaning you just are sitting at your house. You're like, I can't see right now. And your eyes are open. An eye doctor would look at you, and they literally cannot figure out what's going on, why you can't see. And you could have deafness, where your hearing is fine, but you cannot hear. And so the victim does not have conscious control over the disorder. But they're not faking the symptoms. They really, truly have this stuff going on, but they cannot figure out why. And again, it goes back to they experience physical problems, but they only have psychological, mental, or mind issues. A potential problem in the diagnosis is that although medical professionals have not been able to identify a physical cause that explains the symptoms, that does not potentially mean that one does not exist. Meaning, if you go to a doctor and they're like, I cannot figure out physically why this is happening to you, it doesn't guarantee that there isn't a real reason why, that there isn't a real physical reason why. But it just means that there's a potential that they can't diagnose it, and there's a good chance that it's just part of a mental makeup of the individual. These symptoms used to be called hypochondriasis, which is, or hypochondria. You guys have probably heard of that. Somebody's a hypochondriac, meaning, oh, my arm hurts. And they're like, what happened? I don't know, my arm just always hurts. So it's a fascinating thing. Somatic disorders are really, truly, truly fascinating. And again, it feels like the physical change is happening, but it is only really dealing in the person's mind. Okay? So what we're going to do tomorrow is we're going to talk about these. Actually, I take it back. Tomorrow you guys are going to have a test over Chapter 16. On Wednesday, you guys will have, they'll finish this stuff up on somatic disorders. Okay? Hope you guys have a great day.